He's stoked. He's going to be at the Kennedy School of Government.
Oh my gosh.
Policy. Yeah.
Good for him.
So awesome. It's unbelievable.
Thank you.
So great.
Super exciting.
Hey, Chrissy, can I ask you a question? I haven't done on Zoom a presentation. I've only done it on the Google Meets. Is it under screen share where I pull up the document?
Yes. Would you like me to do it for you?
I'll attempt to, and just so I can go through it and read it from my screen.
Gotcha.
And if I can't get it up for whatever reason on that screen, you can go ahead.
Yes. Once you hit screen share, you'll see different options.
Okay.
You can pull a file. Is it a Google Drive?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you hit screen share, you can see that. See, I always do my other screen because I have two screens.
Yeah.
So. So if you need me to do it, I have no problem doing it.
Okay, I'm going to start this meeting. I know everybody's not here yet, but that's okay. This is the Easton School Committee meeting of Thursday, March 25th, 2021. In accordance with the emergency order by Governor Baker, we're meeting on Zoom. If you have a question, you can type it into the Q&A. Make sure you have your name and address, and I'll remind you about that later. If a question's been asked and answered, we will not ask, it won't be repeated. Okay, at this time, I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session with respect to discuss strategies for collective bargaining with Units A and administrative contracts. And by doing this, an open meeting would be detrimental to the school committee's bargaining position. And we will return to open session as soon as we're done with executive session. Do I have a second?
Wiseman, second.
All those in favor?
I'll start. Durant's, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
O'Neill, yes.
All right, so we'll be back in a few minutes. Well, hopefully a few minutes.
School committee, I had shared with you a Google Meet. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So everybody's here. Okay. Great. Okay. Welcome back to the Easton School Committee meeting of Thursday, March 25th, 2021. We are now on item number 4, minutes, February 25th, 2021. Any comments, corrections, or questions? Seeing none, I make a motion to accept the Easton School Committee meeting minutes of Thursday, February 25th, 2021. Do I have a second?
Wiseman, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Okay, thank you. And executive session meeting minutes of Thursday, March 11th, 2021. Any comments, questions, or corrections? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve but not release.
Second,
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, next, we have the presentation and vote to accept OA's program of studies for 2021, 2022. Dr. Cabral.
Each year around this time, the principal of Oliver Ames, Mr. West Paul, presents the program of studies for the following school year. This will reflect primarily any changes to programming, courses, offerings, and so forth, as well as the philosophy behind them and why they may be making adjustments. So Mr. Paul is here this evening to present the program of studies for the 21-22 school year for Oliver Ames. Mr. Paul?
Thank you.
And we also please just note that this is Mr. Paul's last time presenting the program of studies. You do that after somebody presents. I know, but I just want to, you know, this is.
You jinxed me. Yeah, it's going to be horrible now.
Sorry,
Don't put the
it
pressure
never
on,
is.
Chrissy.
Thank you, Chrissy. Chrissy, I'll actually ask you to put the program up on the screen to share. But while you're doing that, I just wanted to thank the department heads that I work with here at Oliver Ames High School. All of the efforts that go into meeting and making decisions on what's best for adjustments to the program of studies cannot be accomplished without their leadership and expertise. And also I want to thank Chrissy for her guidance and help along the way as well. She's a great sounding board and is able to give me advice on suggestions and things that would make it clearer to the public. So with that being said, these are the proposed changes. I believe they were shared with you in a draft form, and this is the final version of the presentation. So the second slide is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I do want to refresh your memory that a few years, well, a year and a half ago, we presented the college and career connections concept to the addition to our school, where we were identifying the need to connect the interests of students and their career potential linked with that interest in some of the courses and clubs that we have. And so the college and career connections portion of the program of studies is something that I've received a great deal of feedback from parents this year, thanking us for it. It was something that you approved. If you remember back, it had 16 clusters of careers, and each of those clusters had clubs and organizations that were related to it, career opportunities within those careers, that cluster, and then college majors and courses that were linked to it at Oliver Ames High School. So it's a really helpful document. Guidance is using it. English, history, science, math teachers are using it when they come into conversations with students. So I put that in the presentation, but I don't want to, I know you're in executive session for an hour. I don't want to belabor the meeting. So I will go into as much detail for the public if you think I need to, or if it's in this presentation in written form, if that's okay. I'll take your lead. Anybody need me to go through this in more detail? Seeing none, we'll just go ahead to the new courses and the changes for this coming year. So the art department is first up, and they had some language change, and it was really a result of a couple of years of dealing with a decision that they had made for graphic design and sculpture, where they originally had suggested that those courses have a prerequisite of Art 1 and were open to grades 10 through 12. And in the process of watching students succeed, they really discovered that the opportunity to have students take art without having taken Art 1 in the form of sculpture or graphic design actually increased the offerings of art within the school. So the change here was to open it up to grade 9 through grade 12 without having that Art 1 prerequisite. And we are in a continuing effort to expand our art offerings to kids so that we can receive Kristen and Jillian can receive even more accolades for their outstanding work, but they are doing a great job. And the other piece of this presentation was talking about the same principles to courses that we've already presented to you in ceramics and digital imaging, photography, where we would open those to students in grades 9 through 12 without the prerequisite of Art 1. So that was the art change there. Chris, if you could go to the next slide. And then the courses that are have been brought before you and you've approved in graphic design 2 and sculpture 2, ceramics and digital imaging have not run because of the lack of staffing. And I believe in the budget presentation, this is something that will be addressed to a certain extent. And so I'm looking forward to having some of these courses based on interest and scheduling opportunities for kids brought back into the schedule. So I just wanted to update you on that. The next is in the business department, which is now business, family, consumer science, and industrial arts. And this is just in the program of studies, a movement in the location of a course. The child development course was originally listed in the business department, but it is taught by faculty that are within the family consumer science department. And since we do not have at this point an internship associated with that course, that's a long-term goal when we finally do get a daycare program somewhere in town or somewhere in a school. That internship would be a component of the course and probably be in the business side of things. But for right now, the course is doing well. There are 16 students who took it and they're enjoying it. And it's it's a child development course and going well, and it's applicable to a lot of different careers, as we talked about before with career clusters. Anyone who's looking at anything that may have to deal with children would be benefited from this course. So I'm happy with that. Moving on to English, there were no proposed changes. In math, I'm going to bore you real quickly with the definition of the course. Algebra 1 has not changed. The math department, being very good at looking at detail, realized that the description was missing some language. And I was just joking. I'm not going to read this to you. You've seen it. But this is the updated language for Algebra 1, and it's more inclusive of everything that they teach. Music, there was a change in the course name. I think sometimes packaging and marketing are important, and the rock and pop music course was not getting the same play. So Jeff Benson worked out a deal to look at changing the name to musicians from the jazz age through, in this case, you say, it says Cardi B. I believe it's Lady Gaga. And again, I'm not very familiar with Cardi B, and I know who Lady Gaga is, so I'm glad they changed it to Lady Gaga. And that was probably a result of my comment to Jeff on that piece.
I think we just all enjoyed hearing you talk about Cardi B and Lady Gaga, so both are fine.
I hope kids will now take this course in droves so that we get more students enrolled in music. The next course is a really powerful addition to the program of studies. It's adaptive music exploratory. It's a course that would be dependent on, and here it says vocal 0.8. It really doesn't necessarily tie directly to staff. I don't want the staffing numbers to be something that you focus on, because I know Dr. Cabral is working at trying to make some adjustments to the staffing for the district in music. And if we are successful, this course may be something we can offer, despite that saying we need 0.8. But it's an adaptive music exploratory course. It's for our students in need of a multimodal course that enhances their musical ability, gives them appreciation for music and music concepts. They're going to play instruments, dance, sing, and be actively involved in a really powerful program. So I think if we can get the staffing, this will be a great addition to our course offerings here for our students that need this. Physical education had no changes this year. They've done a lot of changes over the last few years, and they're like everyone else at this point. This year was kind of a COVID-related year of adjustments. Science, and this is updated because the language on this particular one was incorrect, where it said science positions lost in the last with two sections, science positions lost in the last 2 years. It's very complicated because of the movements that took place, but we actually are only down one science position in the last 2 years, and that was directly attributed to retirements at the point in the year where, from a budget perspective and by class sizes, it made sense for us to not fill and deal with the loss of a staff member that was retiring versus a loss of a staff member who wasn't retiring. But that being said, we are still, from that 2-year period ago, we're still down one person, but I think we're in the process again of talking about it in the budget tonight, of adding that position back. So these courses will probably not be eliminated from the program of studies. But I do have to say that one of the goals of the science department is to philosophically, and I'll go back to the college and career connections component, they really see the strength of our elective offerings being more in the line of chemistry too, which has become very popular with our students and not something we were able to offer in anatomy and physiology, which is an elective. Those courses are directly tied to college and career connection opportunities for students. So the idea would be to make sure that we fill as many sections of those courses before we open up to the other forensics, which served its time and did a great job. But at this point in time, it may be, based on data, more important for us to focus on some of those core courses. Social studies, we have a change. World History 2 is now just going to be called World History, and we added the 18th century to the course description, and this is a result of a grade 8 change, and they no longer have World History 1, they actually do civics, and so it makes sense for us to make that name change and just call it World History. World languages, there are no changes, and I believe that brings us to the conclusion of this year's presentation of the program of studies.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Great job.
Thank you.
I would echo what you said about Mrs. Pruitt and the department heads. This is an exercise that they've been doing several years now, and it takes a lot of thought and consideration and reflects everyone's constantly looking to the future and what makes the most sense for our students as they move forward, both from a college and career perspective. And I am very pleased to see their work on that, and would like to credit everyone for that. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Paul.
You're welcome.
Caroline?
I just want to say I'm really, really going to miss your presentations. I thought I would be able to learn from you to be, you know, a better public speaker. I've tried my best, but it just hasn't kicked in. But I have so admired your presentations over the years, Wes.
Appreciate those kind words, Caroline, and you do a very good job of presenting yourself.
You had to say that, of course, but it's just, I always end up sort of babbling.
Well, you find yourselves talking about things that are a little bit more controversial at times, which creates a more difficult opportunity to present.
Mr. Paul, it is very worthy of noting that Ms. O'Neill did not find one grammar error in your presentation. I have to tell you that is quite an achievement, and you should be very proud of that.
Thank you, Caroline.
Maybe I just didn't mention any.
He's being kind on my way out.
No, I didn't actually see any errors.
Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Paul? Jen?
It's not a question, but I'm really, really excited to see the adaptive music. It actually had come up recently in a CPAC meeting, if I recall correctly. I've been in a lot of meetings lately, but I believe it was in a CPAC meeting that was identified as an area to offer in the high school to continue some good programming that's been going on in the middle school. So I'm very excited to see that. I hope we can make it happen because I think there are some students who are very interested in it.
I agree.
I agree with you, Jen. I think that's a wonderful addition, and kudos to you and the staff for coming up with that and putting that together. And like Caroline, I will miss your presentations, and you always make them humorous, so whether you have 5 minutes or an hour, it's always fun to listen to.
Thank you.
I do have one question. In the industrial arts program, we had talked, I believe it was last year, and it goes along with this college and career thing. Mr. Sullivan left, and so did all of his courses, I believe.
Correct.
Is that on the table anywhere for next year?
It's in the budget for graphic. There's an industrial arts position in the budget. So you'll see that. And once that's back, then the courses that we didn't offer in computer-aided drafting, architectural design, all those courses would come back into the fold.
Great. Thank you very much. And it was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Jackie?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Mr. Paul, that science courses that you said that you were looking to add, can you go over those again, if you don't mind?
So the courses that maybe I misspoke. It's not that we're adding them; they're already present where we have chemistry 2, and we weren't able to offer it this year because of staffing, and we had a number of kids who wanted it, and then we weren't able to offer the same level of sections of anatomy. With a number of students now going into the allied health professions and them reporting back to their guidance counselors and their peers that, if you have a senior and they graduate, go off to college, they're friends with juniors and sophomores, and they start talking about the courses they're having in college and the benefit they had from having anatomy and physiology, or the benefit they had from taking that Chem 2 course as a prerequisite, so to speak, to some of the work they do in their freshman year. So we're really just trying to beef up those sections by the addition of that one science position that we lost over the course of the last 2 years.
Were there any other science electives that you wanted to kind of down the line add to tie into your college and readiness courses that you were thinking about?
That conversation has come up, and it kind of hit a roadblock, I think, when we lost staff members.
Sure. And
it just kind of is, I think people are anxious about trying to get back to where we were before they saying, and as stated in the opening to College and Career Connections, opportunities change on a daily basis with regard to courses and career opportunities. And so by, putting something on paper right now that we think would be a good course, and we know we can't do it for next year, something could change. But forensics was a huge hit when you remember back in the day when CSI first came and everybody wanted to take, forensics. And it's still a course that kids who go into, the FBI and the CIA, eventually, into law and police work, they enjoy that course, but it's not at the same level it was. And science team the same way. It's not getting the same amount of interest as those other courses are. That doesn't mean we're not, the other things we're looking at is probably more in the line of like oceanography.
Sure.
And perhaps something that deals with more on the line of engineering. But that is, again, dependent on, we have a retirement in physics from last year that we were looking to hire. And, some of the things that we will be looking for in that candidate will be an expertise beyond just traditional Newtonian physics. You know, that somebody who could potentially do something in the area of engineering, computer engineering, and things of that nature.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Chrissy?
I just wanted to share with you and the community that I've had the honor of and privilege of sitting with Mr. Paul and his department heads in reviewing the program of studies for the past 4 years. And I have been in awe of what Mr. Paul's leadership has led this community to endure, to be able to have at Oliver Ames. As you know, we do a lot with a little. And Mr. Paul's vision is apparent in every meeting that I sit in. He is able to really foster the leadership in his department heads and help their creative ideas with the expansion of the program of studies. And so I just really wanted to say thank you. And I know I said it before your presentation, but you have been an inspiration, and I really commend you for the amount of work, and thank you for the amount of work that you have put in to improving instruction at Oliver Ames, in teaching and learning at Oliver Ames. And you know, the school is extremely credible because of your leadership. So thank you so much, Wes. You will be dearly missed.
It's been a privilege, really has.
Absolutely.
Right,
It is
so-
actually difficult to imagine. I didn't think we would be, I didn't think I would ever be working here without Wes Paul as the principal. And so this is a bit of a reality slap. But my dad always said to me that no matter how long your career is, a determining factor in your success is how you leave. And you know, I've been sitting here listening to this presentation, and you can still hear the passion in Mr. Paul's voice about what is happening at the school. And clearly there is no waning in the effort or passion or love in this presentation. So this is going to be a very complicated transition for a lot of people in many ways. And so thank you for that. And thank you for continuing to advocate for the school, not just from the program of studies, but for the budget as well. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. And right now we need to accept this. So do I have a motion?
O'Neill, so moved to approve.
Second,
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, next, number 6, budget presentation, Dr. Cabral.
Mrs. Pruitt is going to present for me as well. Thank you, Vanna. This is the initial budget presentation. We are, of course, a bit behind because, as you know, the state budget this year actually wasn't released until, thank you, until the very end of the calendar year. And so we have been working with the town in a very complicated environment, not only because of COVID, but also we have just come off 3 years of really slashing our budget. The few years before that, we were decreasing. And as people know, we are among the lowest per pupil expenditure in the state. And I believe Mrs. Pruitt said just a short time ago, we do an awful lot with far less resources than many of our colleagues and contemporaries. However, this has been a year like no other. It's very difficult in normal times to plan a budget a year and a half before the school year actually begins. It is a very dynamic budget. It's different than any other kind of budget I have ever seen, read about, or understood from talking to people in other industries. And it changes. It's evolving and growing and developing all the time because we're serving 3,500 unique individuals and almost 600 staff members, and the needs of those students are literally why we're here. And those can change, and with that comes some financial considerations to also change with it. So in the best of years, it is difficult. After years of literally cutting, and last year where the town and schools cut literally dozens of our positions, we were really we were down to the quick at that point. We had reduced supplies and materials for several years. We then started eliminating some ancillary positions. And then finally last year, you just heard about several of the positions just at the high school that we had to regretfully eliminate last year, to the point of affecting the programming that we're able to offer. Then we have last year where we're literally planning a budget for a pandemic that none of us has ever experienced before. During the course of the year, we have also had large infusions of federal funding in the form of some stimulus packages, grants, and so on. So this budget presentation reflects some very complicated projections and presumptions going forward. So I will be discussing some of those, discussing some of those. We are just getting the final information and confirmation on the most recent stimulus, the ESSER 3, it's being referred to as. So we are actually going to plan a presentation for you at the next school committee meeting. Once we're hoping all the information is in by then, we can actually give you dollar figures, amounts, projections for all of the stimulus funding that we've received so far, up to and including ESSER 3, which is going to have the biggest impact on the next couple of years. So if you could advance this, please. With that in mind, I just wanted to talk about the process and considerations again. This involves a lot of gratitude to our staff. If you look at on the left-hand side, you can see that we always start with our strategic plan and our core values. And these are 5-year plans. We just completed this the beginning of the last school year. And it has been really our compass, our North Star, and how we're choosing how we're going to move forward in the district. We then discussed this as a cabinet, and we have been using the same process now for 3 years, where the entire staff is involved in the development of the budget based on our needs and our students' needs. We want to make sure that all of the lenses are represented and that everyone's opinions are valued and taken into account. And so that tends to be a very frustrating exercise for people, because they really highlight all of their needs and what needs to be done going forward. And then a lot of times it involves not only not getting those very important resources or staffing needs met, but we then have to reduce even further. However, this just the process of that has been extremely worthy, because it gives us as central office administrators and the cabinet, the building office administrators, a much better idea of what the needs are in the district and how they develop over time. So we have real-time understanding of those needs. And fortunately, we have some resources this year where we may be able to bring back some of the things that you heard Mr. Paul talk about, as well as some other areas throughout the district. It then is presented to the entire staff. We have a process that is fairly uniform across the district, but of course the high school is a little bit different because they have departments. So there's an extra step there where the department chairs weigh in with they meet with their staff and they weigh in. But overall, it's a very consistent process where they give their feedback. There are cabinet presentations to the executive team, which is the central office team, so that the entire leadership at the building level understands what the needs are across the district. It's the job, it's the onus, it's the responsibility of the staff at the school to advocate for themselves, for the principals to advocate for the needs of their school. And we want them to do that. but we're working with a district budget, and it's very important to us that those building principals then understand the needs across the district and how sometimes that ebbs and flows depending on either capital needs or in the case of pre-K to 2, there may be some very significant data informed decisions that need to be made. Same thing at the high school and vice versa. And they've been extremely open to hearing these conversations, and I believe that it's helped them be far more aware of what's happening across the district as well. That is then, that is then considered by the executive team. We put together a compilation of what we believe we've heard and what we think we can do. Sometimes we can move things into grant funding. Sometimes there are things reflected that are one-time funds, and we can purchase those through other means. And sometimes they belong in the operating budget. So we parcel those out. We prioritize them, again, by what we feel like we've heard. We bring it back to the cabinet and they review it with the staff. Just again, to make sure we are hearing correctly. Sometimes there are minor modifications at that point. And then it comes back to the cabinet executive team. We go over that together. We just did that this week. And then it gets presented to the school committee. After that, you know, the typical process, it goes to the joint committees, it goes to FinCom and so on. But I just wanted to make sure that we noted that really every staff member has an opportunity and takes advantage of the opportunity to participate in the budget process. And we're extremely grateful for the work and effort that they put into that. On the right-hand side are just these are the different stimulus packages and grants that have come to us this year. Again, you never know when to expect these. You also can never be sure exactly when they're going to go away until you get all of the information about them. That again, that ESSER 3 and ARP, the last two we're still collecting that information now. So we're going to do a presentation on that for you at the next school committee meeting and what we're choosing to spend that money on. The reason I bring those up is because I'm going to make note of some of them when I'm talking about what we're looking for in our proposal of the FY22 budget. We have to be very careful about using those funds because grant funds are typically 1 or 2 year grants. We want to be very careful, of course, about hiring staff with money. That's our biggest need right now. We serve people and we need people to do that. And so our biggest need right now is our people. Unfortunately, grants don't often allow that. However, we've tried to be as creative as possible with some temporary positions that we're going to explain how we're moving around some money to take advantage and capitalize on this very generous funding that we received to help us advance the district for the next couple of years. Chrissy? So the first step we always take in this budget process is something we've just been referring to as our rollover. In this case, there is one added element, and I'll explain that. First, we take the staff rollover. Our staff, all staff, every single bargaining unit and every single individual contract, there are 6 bargaining units and over 30 individual contracts. And everyone has accepted, and everyone whose contract has expired accepted a 1% increase for next year. And we are pushing those expired contracts forward a year, and we'll renegotiate those next year. This was extremely helpful to us to be able to provide some of the things that the staff has been looking for that you will see represented. Even though it's 1%, and you can see on a $42 million budget, 1% would be $420,000. However, there are steps and lanes and increases that are contractual in unit contracts that actually makes that closer to 1.8, 1.7%. So that's the 607,000 you see reflected there. FDK is full day kindergarten. One of the things that we and have been supported from the town on this feel that there's a very strong commitment, and by town I mean the town administration. We feel a strong commitment to bringing in free full day kindergarten. This is not going to be an option much longer. We are amongst very few districts in the Commonwealth that do not have free full day kindergarten. In light of the recent lack of pre-kindergarten and kindergarten participation due to COVID and the potential resulting academic achievement gaps, we want to make sure that we institute this as soon as possible. If we're able to move forward with this budget, we are going to move $182,000 from our revolving budget. Revolving budget is what the kindergarten tuitions go into to pay for half of every staff member in kindergarten, and move that into the operating budget. And for the next 2 years, use stimulus money to pay for the rest of the staff, but each year incrementally moving approximately the same amount into the budget. It seems like a not very round number, but that's because it accurately reflects certain staff members' salaries that we're moving over. So we did it dollar for dollar. In that way, we're hoping if this budget passes, to offer free full-day kindergarten in Easton in September of 2021. Substitute pay increase, that's something we've talked about at a prior meeting. The minimum wage is increasing each January for the next couple of years. And so this reflects keeping up with that. We pay 25 cents over minimum wage right now. And retirement savings. We had several retirements this year. The savings reflects the difference between what the staff member was making upon retirement and our estimated cost of replacing that staff member. That comes out to $43,233,000, or an increase of 1.4% over last year. Then we take a look at reactive needs. I present this to the school committees to be clear about some of the programming we're looking to try to bring back to the district that has been cut. None of this is new or unfortunately very forward thinking or creative, because we're just trying to bring back things that we've lost by being regressive for the last couple of years. So the English language learner teacher, we have for several years now really noted the fact that we are approximately, my last presentation, we were 10 times, exactly 10 times under our service hours that are recommended for our English language learners. Right now, we're just looking to add one district level English language learner teacher that we plan to use at the pre-K to 2 level. Very few of our kindergarten students are, none of our kindergarten students are receiving ELL services right now. We want to make sure that all students that need that service are able to get it, and that includes pre-K as well. School nurse increases. This is another area, area that we have not been able to make incremental gains to keep up with the need in the district. And we have 2 out of our nurses right now that are 0.8. That just means 80% or 4 days a week. We're looking to increase both of those positions to 1.0 positions. So that would mean we would have 8 full-time nurses in the district. The reason why I'm saying the increases are at intermediate or secondary is because it would either be increased at Richardson Olmsted, the middle school, or the high school. But we have a nurse leader that works with the nurses to determine where the number and acuity are most in need. And so they will make those determinations on a year-by-year basis. Mr. Paul referred to these positions: the science teacher, the industrial arts teacher, part of an art teacher. This would just be adding to an art position that's part-time right now, and music. Again, adding to a position that this is actually, we're trying this, we are trying to be very creative with. Right now, we pay an outside contractor to provide music therapy for about 10 children in our district. We are, I spoke to Mr. Benson, and I didn't know if it was a crazy ask, but thought it was really worth investigating. Would it be possible, because there is a need to add the vocal instruction to the vocal instruction at the high school because of cuts that we've had to make in those difficult years that I was explaining. I didn't know if it was an impossible ask to perhaps get someone that was certified in vocal instruction who also was a music therapist. But Mr. Benson has been very encouraged by the contacts that he's reached out to. So we think we may be able to offset the cost of that, and in that way, be able to bring a partial position back to the high school. So we're working really hard, and Mr. Benson's working really hard at this point to try to help us find someone that is qualified in both areas. And while we don't have the funds to actually bring back a person, we think that using this person in this way, it's going to offset what we're currently paying for music therapy, and it creates an opportunity for the high school. The learning specialist at Richardson Olmsted, this is not eliminating paraprofessionals. Instead, these are two paraprofessional positions that are being absorbed. So through retirements or leaving their positions, Mr. Getchell would like to, instead of replacing those two paraprofessional positions, hire a learning specialist or a special education teacher. He is really endeavoring to provide a co-teaching model at Richardson Olmsted. We do have that operating at the middle school right now. It is what we believe to be a very effective means of teaching special education, where instead of pulling students out of class, you have a special educator working with a content specialist, and they work with students in the classroom. It is a very expensive model, but we are trying it at Richardson Olmsted, and if we have the data that shows that it's as successful as we think it's going to be, it is going to help us determine whether we move forward with this in the future. We also have a learning specialist at Oliver Ames. This is just, I had said that we don't hire full-time bargaining unit staff from grants. It's actually not cost effective because we have to pay for teachers' retirement out of grants when we put a teacher in grant. So we're actually going to move around. This is not getting rid of any interventionists, but I just wanted to point out interventionists, the number of interventionists change every year based on student needs. So these are typically considered more temporary positions, and we have a lot of turnover because it's the perfect spot for us. They have to be certified teachers, and a lot of them are so successful as interventionists, they applied for openings in our district shortly after. So there's a lot of turnover there. So we are looking to move interventionists into ESSER. We feel as though that's a lot safer, it's a lot more cost efficient, and if ESSER is to run out because of some other pressing needs we have in the district, we would not have to terminate any staff because these are one-year positions anyway. And we want to do the same thing with an instructional coach at the middle school. So the Richardson Olmsted has interventionists now that are guided by two instructional coaches. We are adding to the interventionists at the middle school, and it's actually quite an endeavor. The instructional coach also works with students, but they're going to run the data meetings, work with staff, and that's a unit position. That's a unit A position. And then finally, again, in trying to be creative and capitalize on opportunities, Mr. Getchell is looking to replace a retiring library aide with a health teacher position. It's again another need that we've pointed out many times in the district, and we don't have any health teachers at that grade level, none. And so this is to provide the opportunity for students. They'll still go to library as one of their specials, but half of that time they'll spend with a certified health teacher. So again, the cost of the teacher is offset by the cost of the retiring employee. And that brings us to a 0.66 increase, which added to the rollover. And then finally, these are one-time purchases that are needed. And you can see the technology budget is not $30,000. We're just trying to incrementally add to the technology budget. It was completely unexpected that we would essentially become a one-to-one district in 1 year. Obviously, we never could have afforded that if we didn't have the federal stimulus money because of the closure. But the fact is that it's wonderful to have But now that we have it, we have to come up with a procurement plan for making sure that these stay repaired. This is very different uses than we've had in the past. It's quite different to have students go to a computer lab with their teacher, as opposed to having them take devices home with them and back to school every day on a bus. There's just a little bit of wear and tear issue there. So we are looking to, again, augment the budget each year by small amounts to hopefully keep up with that. We have had the benefit of having a phenomenal school doctor. Every school district needs to have one as a consultant for standing orders for nurses and so forth. Dr. Dern has been our doctor for over 30 years, and he has never charged the district. So now we have to, he is entering a well-deserved retirement. And so now we have to add that cost to our budget. Natural gas going up, workbooks up top, as well as supply budgets that have been depleted. Software is likely going to change because, again, we believe that's going to increase. SPED OOD is special education out of district. We have found that while we have been reducing the number of students who have been placed in outplacement because of the programs we have, it has always been an underfunded line. And so we're hoping, instead of prepaying services, we're hoping to have enough in our operating budget to make sure that we are affording our services every year. The last item is different. This is, we have quite an issue with residency in Easton. We really don't have the staff necessary to proactively investigate any questions of residency. This is quite a burden on taxpayers when you have dozens and dozens and dozens of people who are not taxpayers in Easton who are benefiting from the school system, particularly if they're identified as special education students and require more extensive or expensive services. So we follow up whenever we are notified of issues, but we do not have the staff to investigate this proactively. $25,000 is very standard comparatively. With several of our neighboring districts have residency officers. We've never been able to afford one. However, at this point, I strongly believe, with just the cases that we're tracking down now, that this is a position that is going to more than pay for itself. Just identifying one or two students in the district, which I'm sure there will be many more. So we're very strongly advocating for this. This page is a total of $403,000 or 0.95%, which brings our entire proposal to 3.011%. We have been asked by the town to stay at 3%. We believe, again, once we get the rest of the information on ESSER, that we can do that at a clean 3%. And so, again, if we are able to continue on the trajectory we have right now, we should be able to bring back not everything that we've had to eliminate in the last 3 years, but at the very least, the items that you've heard us discuss tonight, which according to the staff, and we agree with them, are our priorities at this time. Are there any questions? Jackie?
About the full day kindergarten. So I know we've been talking about this for years, and for years that we've seen the amount of districts who have either fully funded it or had over a period of years funded it. So my understanding is that there's actually legislation pending at the State House that would require this. Is that correct?
Yes, but not only for kindergarten, but they're actually moving toward legislation for full free day pre-kindergarten. So every year we don't do this, we're creating a larger divide between what we're going to have to come up with once it's mandatory and what we currently offer. So this is really the most fiscally responsible thing we can do at this time without creating a fiscal cliff for Easton all at once.
And do we know, once this becomes mandatory, is there all of a sudden you have to do it? Do they give you a phase-in period? Do we know where that stands?
We don't know that. However, if we look at the map, which I've shown that map every year at town meeting for, well, this is my 8th year, so 8 years. Excuse me. Every year we see the municipalities and towns dwindling in terms of how many are not offering free full day kindergarten. And what we see when we look at what's left, including Easton, it's towns like Sharon and Concord. In other words, towns that we believe, and what our legislature has told us frequently in our budget conversations with them, that they believe the towns can absorb the cost. And so we don't think that there will be a lengthy grace period on that, because we are so far behind our peers, and we are towns that, in relation to our peers that have free full day kindergarten right now, appear to be able to afford it on our own in terms of the eyes of legislators. And so we don't anticipate that it will be a very long grace period, if at all, but we have not gotten to the point where that has been articulated to us.
And I know this past year is an unusual year, but prior to that, were a majority of our kindergarten students in full day kindergarten? Did we have kind of a half and half? Where did we stand with that?
Varies by year, but last year and this year, it's been a much smaller amount in half day kindergarten. As long as half day is the requirement and not full day, you have to offer, if you don't have free full day kindergarten, you have to offer a half day option.
Okay.
We don't, the reason I say that is because we don't have a preference for the half day option. We believe, from an educational perspective, that it is necessary for the children to be in a full day program. When I say that, I know sometimes people tend to bristle because they think of that as kind of shoving students into the system at a very young and delicate age. But I always encourage those people to come and see our kindergarten programs. They're very centered around play and discovery and creativity. They're fun. There's a lot of singing and playing and hands-on manipulatives. It's really a very engaging and exciting environment for kids. And we have found, based on our own studies, that are all the way up until the 3rd grade, our own students outperform the half-day students if they've been in a full-day program. So we have the data that shows us that is in fact true.
And so with the pre-K, with the potential mandate coming down the line, hopefully they wouldn't do that at the same time, but have we started thinking about plans about how we would implement that if we needed to?
We haven't, because the plan we have right now won't have all of the kindergarten employees in the operational budget for probably 4 years. So probably 2 years into that, if we're still on that trajectory, we'll start looking at pre-K if we aren't forced to do it sooner. We're hoping to have some operational efficiencies at the new building, which will be around that time. That will be more concrete. Right now, we just have a sense, and we have reports from our experts that there will be operational energy efficiencies at the school, but we don't have a dollar figure. So it's hard to commit that to anything going forward. So we'll have a much better idea of that in about 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Caroline?
I'm curious how the legislature could really mandate pre-K simply because many districts wouldn't have space for a pre-K program. So I'm really curious. I mean, obviously it's an ideal service to have, but and I know we provide that for children that have developmental needs, but I'm really curious about why there's even discussion unless they were planning to supplement the costs of such a program.
I doubt they would supplement costs at this point because so many other districts have already done it.
Have full pre-K, have
Free
free
full
pre-K
day.
for everyone? Yeah.
Yes, most districts. We are in the vast minority that do not have free full day kindergarten.
No, I'm not talking about kindergarten. I'm talking about
Oh, I'm
pre-K.
sorry. Oh,
Pre-K.
I'm sorry.
Pre-K. It just seems kind of a huge, I mean, it would be really chaos for many districts if it were mandated that they provide free pre-K. That's what I'm saying. I mean, because there literally could be space issues for most districts.
So you're expressing shock that we would be given an unfunded mandate?
No, because I know we've been given many over the years. This just seems so grossly, I mean, it actually seems impossible. I mean, you'd effectively have to cut back on all of your other programs and somehow find space. I don't know whether you do it with trailers or what, but you'd have to, I mean, it just seems, I guess I'm saying that I don't think that's going to happen too soon, because I think that the pushback from most communities would be huge. I mean,
and I hope you're right, but I think a lot of times these things take years to manifest so that we are aware that they're coming. The kindergarten legislation is not new. It has been for a few years now. That's why every year that we continue, it's inevitable that it's going to happen because everyone has been warned. At this point in Easton, we are in an extraordinary position because we do have the new school and we have built contingencies for room to grow in the new building. So we are in a much better position than many other districts.
So my second question has to do with this residency officer. I assume that would be a very part-time position. I mean, that's not a lot of money, $25,000.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What kind of total hours would that normally entail? Just curious.
Well, it depends because a person, in essence, has to be on call sometimes, and you have to call them when there's a situation. We have enough work for full-time, to be honest with you, but we are trying to start this on a part-time basis at first. There's a lot of training that actually goes into this because there are very complex laws involving homelessness, involving students who have caregiver affidavits from other members of their family, renters. There are a lot of complex laws. So the person is going to have to be trained in that information. Like many other things, it changes very often. And they're then going to work on everything that is reported to us. They will fully investigate all of those issues. There's also the most recent development is that for families who have parents who are separated or no longer married, if a child has significant special education costs, for example, if the child is outplaced, which we know can be upwards of almost $300,000 a year, even the non-custodial parent, their town is responsible for paying half. So if you have a mom that lives in Mansfield and the father moves into Easton, Easton is charged for half of that. That had not been the case in the past. That is something that we are just dealing with last year and this year. And it is involving large sums of money, which is why we have a sense of urgency to get this position in place. So we see this as a potentially growing position, but we would rather start part-time. And then as we realize savings from this, increase the position as necessary based on the savings.
Well, thank you. I honestly had no idea that it was as big a problem as you've conveyed.
It's become quite an issue. Yes.
Thank you.
Jen?
Regarding the kindergarten budget, so we're moving 182,000 over to operating. Can you remind me again of what we're currently ballpark using from the operating budget, or using not from the operating budget for funding full day K in a normal year? I know we had lower enrollment in it this year, et cetera, but kind of
the total for kindergarten, The total to go to free full day kindergarten is between $700,000 and $800,000.
Okay. And so 180 would be covered in the operating budget. So that leaves.
No, well, we already have some in the operating budget. Sorry. We already have, can you bring Marilyn in, Chrissy? We estimate that it will take us, depending on how much stimulus money we use and cycle out, it's going to take us approximately 4 years. Hi, Marilyn.
Hello. Hi.
Do you know offhand how much is currently in the operating budget for kindergarten?
So right now it's like 560,000, but we probably will have to add when those, some of those half day kindergartners become full day kindergartners, we might have to add 1 or 2 people. You got to keep that in mind.
And we also estimated that there's going to be a lot of interest in our free program as opposed to private paid programs. And so we've also worked in how much we think an estimated increase would be. And that, of course, involves extra staff, both in teachers and paraprofessionals.
Okay. All right. So what's the gap between what's in the operating budget and the total cost approximately this year?
The total cost of kindergarten with the teachers and the paraprofessionals right now is $1,203,000.
Okay.
That's the total. And
okay.
of that, before this 182, which represents half of the salary for 4 people, but without those people, there's $646,000 in the budget.
Okay. So of the gap's around, say, 600,000. We're expecting to cover 180 of that with this proposed budget. And then we're thinking that remainder, over 400,000, would be covered next year by, did you say it?
No, 4 years.
4 years. Okay. So we would go to free full day K several years out.
No, I'm sorry. We would go to free. We're hoping to go to free full day K in September because we're going to use federal stimulus money. And then each year we use less federal stimulus money and add the increment. And then the year after, we have federal stimulus money until 2024.
Got it. Okay. All right. And we're confident with the amount that we're getting and how long we have it for.
Except for ESSER 3 and ARP, which we're waiting for. And that's why we'll present to you next week.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're not concerned that there's a cliff that's going to come where suddenly we're like, we either need to fund it or go back and ask parents for tuition.
I explained it to the cabinet as a razor thin wire of projection at this point between weaning off of the federal stimulus money and realizing the efficiencies of the new building all at the same time. Those are the figures that we have used to make our projections.
Okay. All right.
That's why we're not adding it all at once too.
Yep. All right. Thank you. I didn't have any other questions.
Nancy?
That was a great presentation. I'm kind of excited. So our hopes will probably be dashed, next week, but we'll see. I hope not. I hope this is true and real and we're moving in the right direction, because the last 2 years have been so
horrible,
devastating.
Mhm.
So I'm happy. Thank you.
Good.
Michelle, did you have any questions?
No, I'm just super excited about
Yeah,
the possibility of that.
We're
And-
hopeful. And obviously these are conservative projections because we're trying to be extremely conservative here.
Right. We don't need to vote on this yet, correct?
No. Oh,
Okay.
gosh, no. Yeah.
Okay.
No. This is only the first. Yeah, no, this is
I know,
just,
it's only the first one. Can we vote now and make it stick? Okay.
No take backs.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Cabral. Very excited.
I'm sorry, Nancy, I just have one more
Oh,
question.
Jackie,
Sorry.
go ahead. Sorry.
I know in past years we've tried to add an adjustment counselor. Is there any of that in the mix?
there is not in this budget. We did ask the schools, what they're doing is, so the 3 elementary schools right now, 2 of them have adjustment counselors that are there full time. So for PK to 2, we have 2 adjustment counselors and 1 psychologist. So what we've done is we have one situated in one school for the TLC program at Center, one situated in another school, and the psychologist situated in the 3rd school. Why I say situated, because if we need an adjustment counselor to move, obviously for a crisis, or a psychologist to do testing at another school, we're able to do that. The psychologist has actually been extremely beneficial for the school that she is at, because she does provide some services for students. She does help them de-escalate and help them with problems. So it's been like having, a mental health professional in each of the buildings. So right now, we're looking to keep it at that. In order to sort of free her up to do that, we are contracting out for some of our psychological testing to outside consultants. Again, that may not be permanent, but hiring those people through the grants, which we're doing, hiring them through the ESSERs that we've gotten, again, is something that we can stop if we need to, and she can pick them up again if she needs to. So that's why it's a conservative approach there, as opposed to hiring a new professional, because we have to keep in mind that next year is the last full school year that these people will be in 3 separate buildings. And so looking ahead to have 2 adjustment counselors and 1 psychologist in the new building, we're looking at trying that first, assessing how that is, and then making a determination if we're going to bring on another staff member there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Next is the capital plan, Dr. Cabral.
Sure. So this is actually being modified a bit because of our recent notification about ESSER 3. So we started with a lot of requests for ventilation issues. While we don't have current ventilation issues, because again, we used a great deal of our stimulus money at the beginning of the year to remediate that, we want to make sure that we're proactive and we stay on top of it. So we have been replacing some compressors and RTUs, the rooftop systems at our biggest schools, as well as some compressors in our gymnasiums in larger spaces. So we are actually, I've already spoken to Connor at the town, that we actually may be taking off some of those items and using our stimulus money for that, because it can be used for things like ventilation. That's exactly what it's for: ventilation, PPE, and staff to close gaps for student learning. So that's why you've heard us use it for those things. Other than that, we have some security improvements that we're trying to do at Richardson, Olmsted, and the middle school. For people familiar with those buildings, you'll know that it's different than some of like the high school, for example, where you're directed into a different space before you're entering the building. The doors actually open right into the building and not actually into an office. So we're looking to do some security enhancements there, where parents or visitors can provide identification, be checked through the Raptor system before they actually enter the school proper. So that's part of our request. We have some furniture request. We have carpets in Richardson Olmsted. That is an ongoing project. We've been doing sections or wings of the building now for the last several years, and we are actually on the last 11 classrooms. So that will be completely done, probably just in time to start again. It's like owning a house. And then there's one piece of mitigation we need to do at Richardson Olmsted, where we have to install some, install some moisture barriers under some tiles that are popping up. So our current capital total is $475,900. But as I said, we're working with the town right now to actually take a lot of that off, including $280,000 of technology equipment that also is counted under ESSER. But as I said before, we have to be very, very careful that we're not just purchasing everything with grant money right now that we then can't sustain long term. So that's what we're trying to figure out. How much can we absorb in the next couple of years? What do we need to keep our technology going with this, now that we have this much larger cadre of devices? And what things are one-time purchases that we can secure through our ESSER funds? And that's really it for capital, unless you have any questions, of course. That has not yet been presented to the capital planning committee, but it will be very soon. They have a meeting set up in the next couple of weeks.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Cabral.
Nancy, Nancy.
I'm sorry, Caroline, go ahead.
No, I just thought of a question. So I may be recalling the order incorrectly, but don't we usually vote on the plan that's going to be submitted to the capital planning committee?
Yes, but we're not quite finished with it because we're trying.
Okay, yep. So because you're looking at those reductions.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, great. Next is discussion and possible vote regarding travel guidelines. Dr. Cabral.
Thank you. So we have recently had several conversations about this. As you know, the last meeting that you had on this was on March 11th. That preceded a change in the governor's order for Massachusetts, where Governor Baker changed his order from an order to an advisory. The last item on the advisory is an encouragement to follow CDC guidelines. Those CDC guidelines are a quarantine of testing 3 to 5 days after return from travel, and then returning on day 8, which is very similar to what we have right now in Easton. I have, just to be clear, have frequently consulted with what we consider our medical professionals in every step of this process. So I am the representative of the school committee to town boards. And in this case, Kristen Kennedy, the Director of Public Health for Easton, is the representative of the Board of Health in all of our conversations. We have, I know I've said this before, but we and Chrissy have met daily up to and including evenings, weekends, holidays, what have you, since the beginning of school, regularly. We communicate every single day, even if it's to say, we don't have a new case today, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Frequently that is not the case, however, and we're talking regularly. We have, and I want to say that I have found Mrs. Kennedy to be a very cooperative colleague and very well informed. She meets with the Department of Public Health regularly, and she brings all of that information to us in our daily meetings. And so we've been kept up to date. In determining how we might move forward with the travel guidelines, again, prior to it becoming an advisory, we did have a conversation at our last school committee meeting. I spoke to, again, what we consider our medical advisors, who would be Mrs. Kennedy, who represents the Board of Health, and our school nurses. Our school nurses are in a very unique position because they're the only people, literally, that have the benefit of both medical expertise and access to our real-time data in every single school. They speak to parents, they know why students are out, they know who's out, they know about every cluster, they know about every case, they know about every travel that is reported to them. They are extremely knowledgeable about that. When I spoke to them, I spoke to the head nurse who spoke to the nurses and represented them. And I spoke to Mrs. Kennedy before our last meeting. And both of them said, without a doubt, it's safer to quarantine. The science proves that it's safer, but they would agree to me proposing. So I approached them, and then I approached you about potentially moving the student requirement to meet the staff requirement, which is testing upon return to Massachusetts. There has been a difference between staff and students. I realize it may not be a popular thing to say, but students and staff are not the same. Adults are different than children. Our adults do not eat with one another. Our adults don't eat with children. Our adults are 6 feet away from all kids. While our students are 6 feet away, they pass one another in the halls, they pass one another on entry, dismissal, they sit on buses. There's just a lot more potential for interaction. So yes, it has been different. And I personally believe that that is justified. But I did bring it up for consideration, and you, I believe, very thoughtfully considered it. You are following the CDC guidance. I understand the onus of responsibility that is on you. I share it. We are lay people who are asked to really consider the health and welfare of other people. But I do want to make it clear that that is not done without medical advice. We have gotten medical advice every step of the way. I have shared that frequently with the school committee. I share that with our principals at our meetings. And obviously you decided to go forth with a conservative approach. And I, after hearing you and understanding your concerns, agreed with that. So now we have a situation where the governor changes the order to an advisory. And as late as this past Monday, there was a Board of Health meeting, which was very unexpected in terms of some of the conversation that inferred that there had not been effective communication between the Board of Health and the school committee. To my knowledge, the school committee has never requested the Board of Health to attend a meeting, because you know that I meet regularly with Mrs. Kennedy. To my knowledge, the Board of Health has not requested to meet with the school committee. I am not on either board, and I cannot invite either board. I don't make the agenda. Mrs. DeLuca makes the agenda. Certainly, if you wish to invite the Board of Health, you can. If the Board of Health wishes to invite you, they can. But due to the law and open meeting law requirements, I found out about, for the very first time, found out about a concern from the Board of Health on Tuesday, and it was too late to post for this meeting. So you couldn't have invited them to this meeting anyway. So I just want to make sure that people understand that developments have been extremely recent, and we can only do certain things in a short amount of time because of open meeting laws. It's not something that we can just ask people to show up. Unfortunately, I would very much prefer that, but it isn't the way that it's done. So I, again, spoke to staff representatives. I spoke to Mrs. Kennedy, and I spoke to our school nurses in preparation for the meeting this evening. Mrs. Kennedy said that she still felt that because she could not really guarantee that everyone would be forthright with their information, that if we had to really say that something was better than nothing, certainly testing upon return to Massachusetts was safer than nothing at all. And so she was comfortable with the school committee not requiring the quarantine, even though, she acknowledged it's obviously safer to do so. I then spoke with the school nurses. They were unanimous in really advocating for what they said is the quote unquote real science. And they actually suggested some ideas, one of which was to potentially keep the quarantine for the next couple of weeks so that they could have a better understanding of whether there are spikes after travel or not. As I've said before, our data has been kept exceptionally well by our nurses. However, it was inconclusive for February because parents have opted out of testing their children when they come back from travel. What they've been opting to do, which is certainly their right to do so, is to keep their children home. As I said before, especially small children, there is testing fatigue. It's very inconvenient to get your children out to a testing site, sometimes waiting long amounts of time or sitting in the car. And they have found it more convenient to just keep their children home when they have. So we have many reports that are documented by our nurses where parents have written in and said, my child has COVID-like symptoms, but I'm keeping them home for 2 weeks and declining getting tested. There's nothing mandatory about getting a test. It just, unfortunately, it did not give us the data we needed, because if we looked at the number of kids who were ill, we have no conclusive evidence that they were positive or not positive. So unfortunately, we cannot tell people whether there was a spike or not after February, because people were testing after December and in November, but many less, dozens and dozens and dozens less were testing after February. The nurses did ask me to read a statement. I've invited all of these people to attend, and I don't fault them for not attending. It is not an easy thing to do, and sometimes has lingering effects that they don't desire. So I said that I would read their statement, and they said, the EPS nurses, using science as a guide, recognize that waiting 5 days after a potential exposure has been shown to allow adequate time for the viral load to reach a point at which the COVID tests will more accurately detect the COVID virus. The EPS nurses also understand that the Department of Education, they also understand the Department of Education and DPH state guidance, and Easton town data may drive decisions by school systems. We therefore defer to the school committee for decisions upon which they have been given the prerogative to vote, as long as the health and safety of our school community can be reasonably ensured. And then they included references to quote unquote real science. One is called Body and Brain. I've been exposed to COVID-19. When should I get tested? Another is called What Does It Really Mean to Shed the Virus, by a Yale University epidemiologist. And then they cited the CDC guidance that says to get tested 3 to 5 days after travel and stay home and self-quarantine for 7 days after travel. Even if you test negative, stay home and quarantine for the full 7 days. Even if you don't get tested, it's safest to stay home for 10 days after travel. And I told them I would read that to you. In talking to staff representatives, what I have found that many parents have perhaps confused two very different topics in this conversation. One is, of course, the quarantine after return from travel, but the second is live streaming into the classroom, or remoting in, as we've been calling it, which we said was not going to be possible. For grades K to 5, that stands true. What I haven't been able to say is that we were actively engaged in impact bargaining with our bargaining units. And because that's done in executive session, it's something that I simply am not allowed to talk about in public. However, yesterday we had a final meeting with the representatives of the EEA, and they agreed that for grades 6 to 12 only, that students would be allowed to remote into classrooms for the remainder of the school year if they have been determined by the school nurse with documentation to be on a quarantine or in isolation or have an extended illness. That does include quarantine after travel. And it is a tentative agreement. It has not been ratified by the union yet. I did ask specifically for permission to discuss it this evening, because typically we would not do that until something was ratified. And they were kind enough to let me share that information. I just want to point out that just because we're bargaining does not mean that there's disagreement or that there's a problem or that there's fighting or that teachers are actually refusing to do anything. They have not. It is part of the process when there is an impact to a working condition, which in this case is teaching simultaneously with all students back in school during a pandemic. You have to bargain the impact. And as I've said before about impact bargaining, we want to bargain the impact. We want to know how this is affecting our staff and how we can mitigate any concerns or impediments to them doing the very best that they can in the classroom every day. And we were successfully able to do that. They had concerns that they shared, which is why we reported that no one would be able to remote in, that I believe and support are very valid. There's a big difference, even at the high school level, there's a big difference between teaching 5 to 7 students who are in person in front of you and paying attention to a computer with more students on it. There's a difference between that and teaching 20 students who are in front of you and students who are on a computer. It's just different. And we have to trust. I have explicit trust because I haven't done it in a pandemic, but I've done it for students who are gravely ill or medically fragile. And I understand the challenges of it. And if someone hasn't done it, it's very difficult to make the determination. It's just a couple more kids. It's no big deal. It is very difficult. And I acknowledge that and accept that from the staff as true. In terms of whether there should be a quarantine or not, they were happy to do a poll if the school committee would like them to do a poll. But overall, their concern is the safest possible environment for their unit members. They are obviously heightened at the idea that they're now going to have twice as many students in their building at 3-foot social distancing. We're making a lot of changes very quickly for them. And we have variants coming into the country, into our state, into our local area. And the rate in Massachusetts has been going up every single day for quite some time now. So they have very real concerns that I don't think should be summarily dismissed. I think we do have to consider those concerns, as well as the concerns of parents and students. In terms of K-5 students missing school, I would hope that people would trust us as the educators in the system to tell them that their children missing school for 5 days, if they are on quarantine, will not have a negative impact on their education. Our educators will make sure of that. They are excellent, they're professionals. They know how to do this. I understand it might be anxiety producing, and I understand there may be childcare issues, and I do acknowledge those. So I just wanted to acknowledge the input and feedback from all areas that I have received. I also acknowledge and understand that many school districts are following the governor's guidelines. Many are requesting testing upon return because testing before returning. I haven't met a medical professional yet who can explain to me why that or how that would make sense. And so that is very frustrating for people as well. So I just want to make sure that I represent all of the concerns that have been brought to me and all of the information that I've been asked to share. And that is for your consideration of how you feel about the quarantine requirement going forward. You don't have to determine that tonight, or you can, but again, that's for your consideration. Jackie?
Sorry. Can you explain why it's different if it is for the middle school and the high schooler to have kids remote in, but not for K-5?
Yes. So for grades 6 through 12, while it is still difficult to work in two modalities, you have far more independent students in the classroom. If I was the parent of 2 6-year-olds, and when they were that age, I would not have been very happy at all if I had a teacher alone in the classroom, because all facilitators had been moved back to their full-time positions in other areas of the school building. I would not be happy at all having one adult supervising 15 to 18 6-year-olds in a classroom by themselves while they were responsible for assisting even one student, potentially 3, 4, 5 students. Students that may be changing every day because of quarantining issues. It's just a supervisory issue in addition to a pedagogical issue. It is just extremely distracting and difficult. I'm not inferring in any way that remote learners are distracting. That is not what I mean at all. They deserve just as much attention in their education, which is why we're providing that grade level with remote teachers. But I agree with the staff that it is just an unreasonable expectation to have children of that age essentially unsupervised while a teacher is on a computer. It is more reasonable, while still difficult, for teenagers to be able to do that.
And so could you also go through, maybe, because there may be parents at home that say, well, why is it more okay for my 3rd grader to miss a week of school, but my 11th grader, it would be more detrimental to miss a week of school? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. To be clear, we have students in every grade miss a lot of school often. We have children who are ill. We have children with terminal illnesses, who get in accidents, who have surgeries. I'm sure that it seems very unusual to a family that perhaps may have students with perfect attendance and are never out of school. For us, this is not unusual at all. And so even an 11th grader would be able to make up their work if they were to miss 4 or 5 days of school. I just want to be clear. I didn't mean that it was necessarily significantly different. It is different in the sense that the work is obviously not the same in 3rd grade as it is in 11th grade. We have students who are taking AP classes. We have students that are preparing for high stakes MCAS. And I really believe that the teachers took that into consideration when they made their decision. In addition to the fact that they shared with me that they want to ensure a safe working environment for themselves as well as their students. And they were willing to take on the responsibility of students coming in and out for quarantines because they wanted to encourage families to make responsible decisions about quarantining. And so that, combined with student and parent concerns about missing school in those grades, they made the decision to tentatively agree to allow students to remote into those grades. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, yes.
Oh, right. Anyone else?
So the ability to remote in at the high school would help to mitigate some of the parents' concerns about getting ready for end of the year testing and whatnot.
Well, it's been how they've been learning all year long, and it's been successful as far as academic considerations. And so, yes, it is definitely different than working independently or making up work after an extended absence.
Well, I know one of the things I'm still grappling with is many of our families are returning to school from total distant learning for the very first time. Mm-hmm. And they made that decision based on certain safety precautions that they perceived would be in place. And I want to make sure that we're still considering that and thinking about those students, because we need to keep them safe and feel comfortable as well.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Caroline?
I'm wondering if it really does make sense for us to have a joint meeting with the with the Board of Health. I think that maybe, between the two groups, we could, be better able to articulate all of the nuances of this very complex situation for the public. I am relieved to hear that the nurses did, in fact, endorse our protocol, because I have only read from the really top epidemiologists and infectious disease specialists that you really aren't, people just do not test positive for the most part until 5 days after exposure. So 3 days, there's a certain percentage that do, not a small percentage, but a reasonable percentage. So 3 days is certainly better than 5. 5 is better than 3, but 3 is pretty good too. But there are actually many people that don't test positive for 8 days. So that's the other extreme. But I feel as though of course, it's terribly difficult for families to plan around a potential quarantine of up to 8 days if you get tested on the 5th day and then wait a few days for the test results. But I did a lot more reading this week, and I know that both the state and to some degree the CDC have loosened various guidelines, and the state has actually gone to just an advisory. But I'm kind of mystified, to be honest, because I don't think they're necessarily, at least the state is necessarily basing their new advisories on the most recent conclusion of the vast majority of epidemiologists that people simply, as you said in the nurse's statement, do not test positive if they've been exposed for about 5 days, typically. So I think if we were able to meet with the Board of Health and kind of sort through some of the complexities of all of this, it might be helpful both to us and to the larger public. It's terribly inconvenient for families. I totally understand that. It's alarming. It's frustrating. I'm sure many feel that it's infuriating, but it's a pandemic, and there are certain, I mean, I know that people can say, well, it's safe. The science says it's safe now to do things differently. I don't know what science they're looking at, but I think that a lot of these so-called scientific conclusions are significantly influenced by political considerations. And I know that's just the way the world works, but it's quite concerning to me that we may be creating a less safe environment for our children and for their families and for the larger community if we compromise to too great an extent on our protocols. But I think that we could use the help and hopefully support of the Board of Health. And, you know, maybe we can ourselves look at it differently a couple of weeks after the April vacation. On Monday night, the select board, Connor Reed, who's the town administrator, did an excellent presentation about the kind of the way cases have trended in Easton. And the week before Thanksgiving, I think it was, there were 60 new cases. And there were an average, starting the first week in January, there were an average of 120 cases every week, all the way through January to the first week in February. And a couple of those weeks in January, I believe the number of cases was quadruple what had been in mid-November. So these were definitely, spikes related to the winter break. And I don't see why that would be so different following the April vacation. So that's of great concern to me. And you mentioned that the staff of, the union wants to keep their members safe. Absolutely. We want to keep our staff safe. We want to keep our children safe, families, the larger community. So it's a real conundrum. Anyway, how does the rest of the committee feel about trying to reach out to the Board of Health? I think they may meet on Mondays, but it's actually too late to have I believe, to post a joint meeting because we're not allowed to count Friday afternoon or the weekend anymore, right? So it's tough to do.
I'm gonna ask Lynn to answer that, but before she does, I just want to know I'm trying to represent all of the viewpoints that have been brought to me for your consideration tonight, and I just want to point out that I have been told by parents that their belief is that the reason there were spikes after Thanksgiving and the winter holidays is because those are more family oriented vacations as opposed to February and April. I don't have the data to say whether they are correct or not correct, again, because we had so many people opt out of testing, but I want to make sure I represent the viewpoints that are represented to me. Lynn said that it is too late to post for Monday.
Well, maybe we can have a special meeting. Doesn't have to be on a Monday or a Thursday, or, if we work with the chair of the Board of Health, maybe Nancy and the chair can get together and work with your schedule, and we can figure out something, because it would just be, it's not going to be a 4-hour meeting. It's just really just a meeting for us just to discuss this one topic and kind of share ideas and get information from them. And maybe there's information that they didn't realize that could come from us. And I think the sooner the better for that.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to add in there, Jackie, is I don't mind setting up a meeting with the Board of Health, but I feel like Dr. Cabral meets with the Board of Health people almost every single day. And she is our spokesperson. So, you know, I would love to sit down with the Board of Health. I think what you say is true. We could give them some information. They might have something else they want to share that hasn't been put out in public yet. I don't know, but
Right.
it's up to everybody.
Right. Just to sort of reinforce what you said, you really had no way of knowing that there was a concern about your deliberation because that was never communicated to me. But in all fairness, I don't believe Mrs. Kennedy knew that there was a concern either. So you had no way of knowing that to invite them to a meeting. You felt, as I felt, that you were getting regular information. So your willingness to meet with them, I think, is very good and should be appreciated.
All right, so I just need to know if people want me to go, if the committee would like me to go forward with working with Lynn to get a meeting with the Board of Health.
I think it's a good idea, Nancy. And as Jackie said, the sooner the better. I know that people are eager, you know, to find out if there is going to be any kind of change. You know, it's just really hard for me personally to say that I can just throw caution to the winds and stop basing my own thoughts on this on what appears to be really widely accepted scientific information about the point at which people are likely to test positive. And I do agree with Leisha too, that to test 3 days before you come back from a trip makes no sense whatsoever. And I don't know, frankly, you know, I know that Governor Baker and others say that they keep consulting with their medical experts, but I'm quite mystified at the disconnect between what they're supposedly being told at the state level and what I'm hearing from the, you know, heads of public health of Harvard Medical School and Brown University and so on. So, you know, to me, it's just bewildering.
Thank you. Jen?
I just wanted to echo my support for getting together with the Board of Health. I think the more information that we have and the more perspectives we hear from, you know, with people who have, you know, expertise and thoughts to share with us, the better a decision that we can make. And I also wanted to, I know, you know, this is all speculative, but I know there is some question about, you know, the difference between, say, a holiday, you know, Thanksgiving and winter holiday gatherings and the spread there versus the type of visiting and traveling that people will be doing over April vacation. And I do hope that bears out and that's the case. But, you know, I am worried about, you know, I'm hearing a lot of people going to destinations that have far looser guidelines and you know, possibly bringing back the virus in places where it's growing and not really under control. So, and I think that may be a little bit different from travel that might have been done in February or over the winter holiday. So just a little bit of a different flavor and another consideration that I would love the opportunity to, you know, talk more about with the Board of Health if they're open to meeting with us.
Thank you. Caroline?
Well, as usual, I agree with what Jen said. Leisha alluded to this earlier. The variants are serious business, and there appears to be quite a bit of evidence that the UK variant, for example, is more transmissible to children and also more likely to have children transmit that variant. The Brazilian variant and the South African variant appear to be far more lethal. Now, again, you know, the scientific opinion on these things evolves. So, of course, we hear something one week and then we hear something a little different the next. And I would like to think that those things don't turn out to be as serious as many of the top experts are warning us about. Now, the fact that so many people are getting vaccinated and we're up to over 2 million people a day, I think is wonderful. Of course, the vaccinations are designed to stop the original variant. There is some evidence that at least with the Brazilian and the South African variant, they'll be less vulnerable to the vaccine. So that's another sort of wrinkle. So it's really hard. I mean, Jen, you were kind of alluding to this. There are many people that are going to be taking different kinds of vacations in April. We don't know how that will play out in terms of the infection rate. The vaccine is a huge factor. We're hoping that tamps down the infection rate a lot, but the variants are kind of a wild card now. So the whole thing is so complicated, and I don't think we can just declare that a different kind of vacation is going to keep people safe. And given the variants, I don't think we can declare that vaccinations alone are going to save us. So complicated. Anyway, let's hope we can meet with the Board of Health and have some more clarity at the end of that meeting.
Okay, so then I will move forward to make a date with the Board of Health. I'll send you options of days and times when I make contact. All right, any other comments or anything anybody wants to say before we move on? All right, thanks everybody. All right, and before we get to our next item, I just want to remind people that are writing in, if you want to send in a question, you can do so in our Q&A. Please put your name and address with your question or else it won't be read. And if a question's already been asked, it won't be asked again. So it'll be asked and answered. And then if yours comes later on, it's already been asked and answered. It won't happen again. Thank you. Next, personnel change, Dr. Cabral.
Okay, unfortunately, we have another retirement to report. Unfortunate for us, fortunate for them. Steve Shores was hired in September 2002 as the special education grade 5 and 6 resource room teacher at what was then the FL Olmsted School. He was a mentor during 2009, 2011, received his professional teacher status in 2005. He plans to retire on August 30th after 19 years with the district as a special education teacher at the Richardson Olmsted School. Unfortunately, he isn't able to join us this evening. I want to point out for anyone that hasn't had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Shores, he is, he's kind, he's gentle, he's a gentleman, he's very smart, he's very funny. He has probably the best retirement letter I've read, and I've read a lot of them. I laughed out loud because you just don't expect to laugh when you're reading a retirement letter. So I know you'll be reading that, Nancy, but he is, you know, a lot of people don't realize about Mr. Shores, and I hope he wouldn't mind me saying this, but when we've had students who have been confined to the home, he has often gone, and even when they are at a point where they really can't receive even one-on-one instruction, he would just sit and read. He would just sit and read to the children. We found out at one point he was doing it without asking to be paid. We started paying him for it. He is a very kind and loving person, and he is going to, like all of our other retirees, he is going to be a great loss to the district.
All right, thank you. I'll read his letter. Dear Dr. Cabral, I am writing to inform you of my intent to retire as of August 30th. It has nothing to do with the pandemic, but I turned 65 years of age on this date, and I have to start looking forward to the wonderful things that ahead of me, such as assisted living, memory loss, and the gradual breakdown of my musculoskeletal system. All kidding aside, I have been in education for over 40 years, and it will take some adjustment going from a teacher to a retired teacher. I am fortunate that I will no longer have to write IEPs, evaluation, and progress reports, especially on what I have called lost weekends. But I will certainly miss teaching and interacting with the students in the classroom. It has been a rewarding profession. I am grateful for the opportunity to teach in Easton for the last 18 years, as well as the many years prior when I was a teacher and a para for the Project Spoke Collaborative. Thank you for your support over the years, and I wish everyone well in the Easton School District. Sincerely, Stephen Shores. So I'm going to throw in my comment. I've known Steve forever. He and my brother-in-law went to Boston State together. So there are some stories to be told, which will not be told here. But he is a funny guy. He loves the outdoors. He has a wonderful wife, 2 daughters. He's such a special person in that special ed department, and he is going to be missed. So congratulations, Steve. I'm very proud of you. Does anyone else know Steve? I don't think so. No. Caroline, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, I just was adjusting my mute button because I know we have to very regretfully approve this retirement, but he sounds like a fantastic person.
He really is. He really is. So you just made a motion, and do I have a second?
Well, it was sort of a motion. I move to accept with regret the Shores retirement.
Wiseman, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Cabral, district update.
Just a couple of things. This is actually something that I've been working on with Mrs. Pruitt. Just wanted to let people know, or let you know specifically, that we have started working with Dr. James Samuels. He is the owner of the Education Alliance. He is a lifelong educator, mostly at the higher education, working with higher education professionals. We have had an issue with students in what's called dual enrollment at the high school for years, because dual enrollment is when they take a course while they're in high school at a local college or university for college credit. But it is very difficult to do during the school day when you have fixed classes at the college or university level, and schedules like ours, which are very common in high school, are rotating. I have had the opportunity to meet with several of my peers in the area. There are 9 of us right now. We actually have sort of put together this South Coast consortium of schools that are looking to create an early college pathway for our students, which would be what we are envisioning as a new and improved dual enrollment program. Dr. Samuels is helping us with that. We are working on this project right now, specifically with UMass Dartmouth, with credits that would be transferable to all of the UMass system, and certainly to other easily transferable to all within the UMass system, but would also be acceptable from other colleges and universities because they are true undergraduate credits. I will just give you sort of the higher level information right now because the details are being worked out, but students would have the opportunity before graduating to earn up to 12 college credits. We're looking to match these areas of interest with our Pathways program, which you heard Mr. Paul allude to tonight, that they've worked very hard on putting together for students. So we're really focusing on career technical pathways. what are those areas that our students express an interest in pursuing that we really don't have opportunities here, and there really are opportunities for them in other schools in the area. And so we've been working, we've met with them probably half a dozen times now. We've had the high school personnel, the guidance department, they've been working with us, and the head of the department chair of family consumer science, business and industrial arts. And we're trying to come up with those areas that we can pursue. Working in a consortium is going to give us some flexibility in the sense that if we only have a couple of students really interested in a particular area, like I think earlier Mr. Paul referenced oceanography, we're looking at things like marine biology, sustainability, environmental science. We can have them participate quite locally because they'd be part of this consortia. So if we have 3 students that are interested in marine biology, for example, combined with students from the other 8, currently 8 districts, we have more districts kind of calling to inquire about this partnership every day, they would be able to work as a cohort, and UMass Dartmouth would send adjunct faculty here to the community. One of us would be a host school where the other students could come and participate, and our own staff could be teaching some of these courses as well. It is not to take away any courses from our staff. If anything, what we're trying to do is provide more opportunities for our staff and for our students. So we're very excited about the fact that this is starting, that we have so much interest from colleagues in the area. And we look forward to bringing you more specific information in the coming weeks. It may even be something that's available to students in the fall. That's something that we're trying to hammer out now.
Jen?
That's very exciting. I'm super happy to hear about that development. It's definitely an area that I don't hear a lot of parents asking for it, but I do hear it mentioned as a you know, kind of a lack at OA, that we don't have good support for dual enrollment. We don't have a lot of referrals to dual enrollment. There doesn't seem to be a lot of support for the idea of dual enrollment. And I actually hadn't considered the difficulty of the schedule, and that would have been an impediment. So thank you for clarifying that. I think that's info that, you know, some of the people who have been dissatisfied with trying to get to dual enrollment with their students might not have understood that the rotating schedule would be an impediment there. So I really appreciate that the district is forward thinking here and getting creative, and it sounds like a really great opportunity. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this develops. So great work. Thank you.
Well, and a really great, I'm sorry, Caroline, a really great way to add some courses that we wouldn't be able to otherwise add, which I think is very exciting.
Yeah, we're trying to be as creative as possible with the situations we're finding ourselves in, and fortunately, it is creating some opportunities for us. Caroline, sorry.
Well, I also think it's a wonderful advantage for families who may want and need to save on college costs. College costs just
Absolutely.
keep escalating.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what a wonderful way to address that issue. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Sure. The only other item, then I'm adding it now, so I won't have any superintendent notes, so you'll be able to skip right over that, unless I think of something, which I may. Is the fact that I just want to give a quick update about the Blanche Ames building process. So if people are driving by, they see that Bright Builders, they came out of the gate. Wow. They have, before we've even been able to really get a lot of information out, they move forward, and we are not in any desire to hold them back. So if anyone has been to the campus, you see that they have put fencing all around it. We thought that would indicate it was off limits, but we did have some people drive through a section of the gate and utilize the field. We really want to point out that is now under control of Bright Brothers, and they're responsible for that site. It is going to get very dangerous very quickly. And so we are asking everyone to please stay off that. The gates are now locked, but please do not scale the gates. Please do not go in there. Even if you think not much has been done, there's some digging that's happening. There is some testing, some boring that's going on. So we need everybody to stay off that area. It's not just teams. We need people to not walk dogs there, to play there. There are some stretches that still look like field, but there may be unstable ground there. There may be tools or items that have been dropped or placed or markers. Please stay away from the area. It's simply not safe right now, which is why the fence is there. As long as you stay outside of the fencing, of course, it's perfectly fine. So we are going to see some inconveniences that we predicted, we know, we've told people about. We're just asking everybody to help one another endure this as best as possible for the next 16 months or so. There's going to be increased traffic. There's going to be dust. All of those things the company is well aware of, and they have lots of mitigating strategies to try to keep that under control. But certainly there will be some noise. They are scheduled to work only between 7 and 3 every day. They will only work, and that's Monday through Friday. They will only work on Saturdays if they notify us in advance. You will see that they also took down several trees. They took down the dugouts. There's a lot already happening. So we are excited about that. The children are very excited about it. They are looking out the window today and seeing the trees go down, and it was an educational experience. I don't know what's going to happen when the big trucks come and start digging, and it's just going to be a wild experience. So again, we're trying to make it as positive and educational as we can for the children as it's going on. And certainly we all know that it's going to be well worth it in the end. So I did send out a school messenger today with some real quick information. We tried to get something out very quickly because it just happened a lot faster than we were anticipating. So that information went out. In that, it does note that abutters are actually going to be contacted directly by Bright Builders, because part of our bid was that we requested that any abutter that was interested would have the opportunity to have their property videotaped before any construction begins, so that if they feel there's any damage, we can make sure we remedy that immediately, because of course we want to be good neighbors to everyone who's in a butter. So Bright Builders will actually be reaching out to them specifically, and they have all those names and addresses. They were actually sent a mailer separately. So if you are in a butter and you didn't get something by postal mail, please call Lynn Souza at central office, and we'll make sure that you get that, and we'll make sure that you are appropriately on our list. But for everybody else, we are sending out updates. We have not yet updated our website for the project, but we will be updating it. So please start checking that. Starting in April, you will have updates. We're going to be posting pictures so that you can see what's going on, what's been done. We do have a groundbreaking scheduled for April 9th at 10 or 10:30 in the morning. Due to the pandemic, we are keeping it very small at this point, but it will be recorded and available for viewing at a later date. So very exciting developments. My head has been spinning, believe me, and we have some great people working on this project. I'm quite proud of our project manager, PMA, of our architects, Perkins Eastman, and now our newest team member, Bright Brothers Builders, who is doing our general contracting. So that's the update on the school project, and I think that's going to be it for me tonight.
I have a question, Dr. Cabral. Yeah, survey results for remote learners and, busing. Where are we on that?
So that's a great question. We're actually placing, I should say Lucini is finishing the placing of all students on buses. We had over 200 and something, both for pre-K to 2 and then again for grades 6 to 8. So starting Monday, the pre-K to 5 student, or excuse me, the K to 5 students who requested a bus should be getting the information about the bus that they're going to be on. And then starting on the 26th, students in grades 6 to 12. We also have, or Lucini again, I want to give credit where credit is due. They've done a lot of work, again, in a very short amount of time. They have also, we asked them to see if they could give us an estimate of what it would look like if our students within that 1.5 to 2 mile radius were allowed to go back on the buses. And as of right now, it looks like we'll be able to fit all of the students who requested it in that radius. So it is, you know, we typically have a pay and ride. We are not going to charge if we're able to get those students on the bus. We are not going to charge for the remainder of the school year. But again, we'll let those parents know as soon as possible. We just want to make sure that there's appropriate spacing on all of the buses, but it looks really good right now that we will be able to offer that.
How many fully remote about in each, like, is there about in each grade level, like grade 3, there's 40 fully remote, or there any numbers?
Yep. So we have, I wish I had kept this open, but Chrissy, do you happen to have that open on your computer? With 47 open tabs, you'd think that would be 2 of them, but for some reason it's...
Yes. So we're still working on 6 through 12, gathering all of the information because we do have some missing missing surveys. So our front offices are working and guidance are working on gathering that data, and we will get that to you as soon as we have those numbers. But half day K, we only have 4 students that are fully remote. Full day K, we have 0 students. They are all back fully in person. Grade 1, we have 9 students. Grade 2, we have 14 students that are fully remote. Grade 3, we have 12 students fully remote. Grade 4, we have 11 students fully remote. And grade 5, we also have 11 students fully remote.
Great, thank you. Excellent. Thank you for that information. Appreciate it.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions?
I will shout out though that we did have almost 200 grade 6 to 12 parents who didn't respond to the survey. So we really would encourage them, please, to fill that out. At this point, all of those people have been contacted by our schools. Please answer those calls. They're very important to our planning right now. So please answer those calls and let us know your intentions, please.
Right. And just to add that the survey is closed. Mm-hmm. So if you please call the front offices if they have not reached out to you and if you have not filled out the survey, that means you're on their list of people to call.
I know, speaking of the survey is closed, I noticed that the Adopt a Senior is all done. They got an adoption for every senior. That's awesome. Okay.
And it's fun reading the little bios that they send us. It just, you kind of wish it wasn't anonymous, even though you totally understand it is. So we have to respect that. But
right.
Boy, they can say an awful lot about themselves in 2 sentences. It's great. Yeah, it's very exciting to be part of it.
Great. Okay. Public comment. Chrissy, go ahead.
Sure. So the first question is from Amy Duffy, 178 Washington Street. Wonderful news hearing about free full day K. I have a kindergartner right now and 2 more in the next 2 years. I have to say, with such a challenging year, I've seen my son grow so much this year and can't thank the staff, Mrs. Sarandolo and Mrs. Wirtz, and all the staff at Moreau Hall for that. Looking forward to the years to come.
Thank you for that. I'm sure the staff appreciates it, and it's certainly well-deserved by them. Thank you.
The next question is from Jennifer Troy, 800 Bay Road. When will the budget with free full-day kindergarten be decided?
It won't officially be decided until town meeting. That's when the town votes on the budget, but there will be a school committee vote before that. Town meeting is April, no, it's usually the first week of May, but you can easily find that on the town website. I'm sorry, not prepared to answer that, but that's when it actually becomes official because the town needs to vote on our budget for it to be.
I think it's
Monday, May 17th.
Thank you. Monday, May 17th. Thank you.
The next statement again is from Amy Duffy, 178 Washington Street. Just wanted to point out Project Beacon offers COVID testing, many locations available. Closest is Hyde Park, about 25 minutes from Easton. Very easy drive-through, and both times I've received results for PCR in less than 24 hours. Just have to register, no insurance needed, and no reason for testing needed. Something I recently found out about that was a great option for us, just for other families to know about. Thank you for sharing that.
Very helpful information. Thank you.
The next question is from Kelly Jackson, 5 Christopher Drive. If the 6 through 12 students are allowed to remote in, why meet with the Board of Health?
Well, it would seem, I certainly don't want to infer what you're saying, but it seems as though your concern was about a child not remoting into 6 to 12. But there are parents who have concerns about the K to 5 students quarantining, and there are others who do not feel that it is necessary to have a quarantine at all. And so to the school committee's credit, I think they're being thorough and listening to what the Board of Health has to say about the topic.
Lauren Loomis, 4 Abbey Road. Would a quarantine testing exception be made for 16-year-old plus students, 16-plus-year-old students who have been fully vaccinated?
Yes. So we have presented the 2 exceptions. It is also, it's in the playbook. They're slides 27 to 29. So please refer to that. But we have already accepted the exceptions to testing. One is what you noted, which is anyone who has been, or 2 weeks after being fully vaccinated, whether it's 2 weeks after the 1-dose Johnson & Johnson or 2 weeks after the 2-dose Moderna or Pfizer vaccinations, that there is not a need to test. You just have to show proof of vaccination. The other exception is for anyone who has had COVID, but it has been more than 10 days since having COVID, but less than 90 days. The date of return is less than 90 days from having COVID. So those exceptions, again, are in the playbook if you want to refer to that, or maybe I'm saying it too quickly, but you can go back and check that at any time. And we will be updating that if anything else on the travel guidelines changes also. But those have already been presented to the school committee, and we have been accepting those as exceptions. Thank you for asking.
The next question actually is a repeat about the process, so I'm not going to read that. So the next question is from Nick LeBlanc, 6437 Robert Drive. I appreciate the discussion about the safety of students and faculty. However, I ask that any information shared at these meetings which related to data and medical professional opinions to please be sourced going forward. There have been a number of items mentioned by Caroline which are completely inaccurate according to the same medical professional she is referring to. We do not need any more opinions spreading fear. We need to operate on facts. So please refrain from personal opinions and begin adding value by providing factual sourcing. Saying heads of Harvard Medical School and making loose statements is dangerous in this public forum. I will be emailing the school committee additional information on this matter.
Okay. I don't think that's a question. I just want to add to the school committee's credit that I have seen, I've worked with them very much in the past year, and I have seen no motivation other than the safety, health, and welfare of your children and our employees. And so I think the fact that they are asking to meet with the Board of Health is showing that they're looking to have accurate information for consideration. And I think that that's very important. So it's difficult to be put in this position. They are put in this position. And I've seen nothing other than care and concern for the people that they are charged with protecting.
Okay, and the last question is Amy Duffy again, just asking to repeat the number of kids per grade who remain fully remote from PK through 5. Thanks so much. Just PK, I don't have that on this sheet, so I will have to get that. I was just, okay. But half day K is 4 students. Full day K are 0 students. Grade 1, 9 students. Grade 2, 14 students. Grade 3, 12 students. Grade 4, 11 students. And grade 5, also 11 students. And that is not it. Hold on. Oh, darn it.
I was just going to say, thank you, Chrissy.
I know, I was all excited. No, I'm only kidding to the public. Please ask away. Heather Sweeney, 340 Foundry Street. The CDC's science briefing on the transmission of COVID in K-12 schools noted that evidence suggests that staff-to-staff transmission is more common than from student to staff or student to student. Given this information, I do not understand the reasoning behind the differing travel protocols for students and teachers. Why are teachers allowed to test upon arrival and return to work immediately following a negative result and bypass the quarantine requirement? Please consider this when meeting with the Board of Health.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. You may have missed a conversation that we had earlier, so you may want to check this meeting later for that answer. If you don't find it, please let us know.
It actually was Mrs. Sweeney from, it
I
says Michael, but
apologize.
it says Heather. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's
Mrs.
okay.
Sweeney.
Kathleen Genova, 31 Arbor Way. Dr. Cabral referred to the excellent data on quarantines. Maybe excellent. Will the school committee review and share the number of students who have disclosed out-of-state travel and the percentage that have been tested or presumed positive after return?
So the school committee doesn't have access to that information. That's actually a HIPAA violation. Mrs. Pruitt and I have actually, we received legal guidance before we accessed the information because we needed to make sure that because it was a public health emergency that we would be able to use the information for contact tracing in schools, which we were given permission to do. So the school committee can't do that. However, I will tell you that there are well over 600 entries on our nursing page for the high school. It's very similar for every other school. To go in now, I can tell you that neither I or Mrs. Pruitt can calculate that for you right now. It would require the school nurses doing that. And as of right now, they do not have the capacity to do that, unfortunately. However, Mrs. Pruitt and I and every school nurse has read every one of those, say 600 times 6 schools. So we know from reading that when we discuss certain issues, it's because we have read every single line of that and we know. At some point when this is all over and we're not in the midst of a crisis, we will compile information, but we simply don't have the staff to do that right now. We would love to provide that, but we don't have the staff to do that right now, unfortunately.
And that's all we have at this time.
Thank you. Dr. Cabral, superintendent notes. I know you said you didn't have any, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Nope.
Okay.
There's a comment that it's not a HIPAA issue because it's anonymous, but it's not anonymous. Those sheets have a lot of identifying information. So we would have to scrub that and give it to you. And again, we don't have the data to do that. I mean, the staff to do that right now.
Right. Thank you. Assistant superintendent notes.
Okay, so I just want to commend our elementary principals this week, Ann Weintraub, Tom Higgins, Sam Cedarbaum, and Chris Getchell, along with their staffs for the amazing job they did on getting our kindergartners and 3rd graders back 4 days. The energy in the buildings have been wonderful, and you know, they've been sharing pictures with us and we've been hearing wonderful stories. So I really want to commend them for the hard work that they put in. I also just want to say that I really appreciate the phased in approach that we've been using at this age level, at the elementary level. because of the complexities of our youngest learners and just how they maneuver throughout the building. So I think it was a great idea for us to phase this in, especially also so that our principals had time to really work out some of the kinks and review policies and procedures that they've put in place regarding COVID. So thank you to the school committee for supporting that. It has been a wonderful week, and they're really excited about next week and getting all the kids back in.
I just want to add, a sincere thanks to parents for being patient with that process. It's very difficult to have a different schedule in different weeks and to have a phased in approach, but please know that it has made quite a difference in the school. As Mrs. Pruitt said, we were able to work out some bugs. They were able to see things that they hadn't anticipated with a much smaller group of students before there were many more students, so that they can make those adjustments before the students come in. So overall, we strongly feel it has created a much safer process for all students. So we are very thankful for your patience and cooperation during that time.
And I also just wanted to let the committee know, actually, as you know, but the rest of the community, that we did host our 3 finalists for the Oliver Ames principal position at OA over the past week. It has really been a great experience. I have loved spending my days at Oliver Ames, just to the full days, to really see just how everything is unfolding and live even more so in the culture that is there, the positive culture, and the just hearing all the different aspects of what makes OA so wonderful, as I already knew, but getting to live through that has been a wonderful experience. The committee did meet tonight, and we are making a recommendation to the superintendent on who will proceed. I have not notified the candidates yet, so I'm not going to make that public at this time, but I will be sending out communication to the staff and students and community, the parents, to let them know what the next steps will be. The finalists are having their final interview with Dr. Cabral next week, so hopefully a decision will be made soon after that. I also just wanted to share, as you know, that I have been a champion of our teachers and how they have pivoted, sorry, I'm using the word, in this so many times throughout the past year. But one of the candidates, as we were walking through the halls of Oliver Ames, said to me, I wished that the candidate wished that they had a team from their community with them to see what our educators have been doing. It really is wonderful to hear from another community just what we have known to be true in the high level of education that our kids are receiving given the circumstances, right? We all know that the best circumstances are when they're fully in, but given the circumstances, other districts commending us for the work that we're doing. So I just wanted to share that with the community, and again, thank our staff for always putting the kids first and really making this work in these unprecedented times. So I just used 2 words that I promised I would never use again: unprecedented and pivot. So hopefully I will be able to stop doing that soon. But it has been a very wonderful experience, and I feel very, very confident that the next principal of Oliver Ames will be somebody that will be very successful in their position. So the search committee has been wonderful to work with. They have always put the best interests of the students first, and really have been the students and staff and community, the whole school community of Oliver Ames, and they're truly passionate about finding the right person for this position. And so, as I had a tear in my eye, although I didn't cry, Caroline, don't worry, about our last meeting together as a search committee. I feel extremely proud of the work that we've done, and feel very confident with the people that we have moving forward.
It's important that the committee understands just how involved the process has been, and it has gone off without a hitch because of Mrs. Pruitt's organization, her implementation, her problem solving, it takes a tremendous amount of coordination, and she has made the candidates all feel very welcome. I also thank the candidates because we have put them through an extremely rigorous process. Believe me, an extremely rigorous process. And that's, Easton and Oliver Ames deserves no less. So I certainly don't apologize for it. I just thank them for their commitment to getting this far, because they obviously felt very strongly about joining this community and putting themselves out there. And I thank all of them very much, even the candidates that may not be moving forward. But it must be acknowledged, and I certainly acknowledge very much Mrs. Pruitt's dedication to this process. She is leaving a lasting imprint on Oliver Ames High School going forward with her work with that wonderful committee in bringing forward the very best for our high school community. So thank you very much, Mrs. Pruitt.
Thank you. I also just wanted to say thank you to those that responded on the surveys. We have read every single comment multiple times. So, and a few people have emailed me their responses because the surveys were they're having some trouble accessing the surveys, but we really have read them and they have completely been taken into account. And so it's been wonderful to have so many voices at the table on this extremely important decision. So thank you everyone for your involvement.
Before you finish, I just wanted to say, Ms. Pruitt, about the MCAS letter that you sent to, who was it? The governor? No, Desi.
Speaker Mariano. The speaker?
Yeah. Okay, and thank you. I was glad to see your name on it, and you know how I feel about this, so thank you very much. Okay, school committee notes, Caroline.
Well, first of all, I'd certainly like to tell anyone who's still in our meeting that I have never intentionally stated information that was incorrect. And I'm not convinced that I've actually done that. It's possible that people interpreting things that I have said may have been misguided by perhaps my poor explanations of things, but I will try from now on to be sure that I have the names and the exact titles of articles, etc., that I am using when I share information. I just also want to add my thanks to Chrissy Pruitt and share the appreciation that's already been shown to her for the incredible planning and implementation of the principal search. I wondered when the whole thing began how this was going to happen during such a challenging time. But Chrissy, you really made it seem seamless. You made it seem easy, which I know it absolutely was not. And I just really want to also add my thanks to you for doing such a wonderful job.
Thank you. It was a lot of people's work. It wasn't just me.
I know. Well,
thank you.
I know that you always share the credit, but you deserve a whole lot yourself.
Michelle.
I do not have anything tonight.
Okay, thank you. Jackie.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to our educators and administrators and mental health professionals for all the work that they've been doing and will continue to do over the next couple of weeks to welcome all our students back. There's a lot of work that has gone into it, not just getting the classrooms ready, but getting all the materials ready and being prepared for students who may be thrilled to come back, students who may be a little worried to come back, and how they're going to deal with all that. And I know they've been just working tirelessly on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Jen?
I'm going to say thanks to Chrissy again. So I'll embarrass you again. But as the school committee representative on the search committee for the principal, I've had a front row seat to all of the work that has gone into it. So I just want the community to know that this has been an extremely, extremely robust process. We've had some really good, very honest conversations. And at the end of the day, as we're, considering this and that and picking these candidates apart, it really comes down to figuring out, who's going to be the best person to lead the Oliver Ames community. And that's at the heart of this search. So it's been a really eye-opening and gratifying process to be a part of. And Chrissy, I have to compliment you on the site visits. I know when the candidates were here, you were with them all day for 3 days as the host. And then when we were on the site visits, we're able to give your full attention to anybody, the groups with whom we were meeting, while at the same time, I know also frantically dealing with things like the survey link isn't working and, being able to respond to emergencies and have your Easton hat on, while also, again, being very respectful and giving full attention to the people at the school communities we visited. So I just blown away by how smooth and easy you made this process for everybody on the committee, and just the job you did with engaging so many people and stakeholders and handling all the logistics during a really difficult time when you certainly had more than a full-time job already with your normal day-to-day stuff. So thank you for doing that. And the OA community and in Easton in general will really benefit from all of that work and expertise for a long time to come.
Thank you.
And that's it.
All set? Okay. All right. So I have, I got a message from Leslie Fitzgerald, who was on the original naming committee for the Oliver Ames High School. She and a group of people have a Facebook page, West Paul Naming Project. They're collecting donations. They're trying to do 6 figures in 6 weeks, but she said whatever they get is fine. And she wanted to remind people the funds are raised and used to augment programming at the high school. So we're talking about all these different programs, childcare, music, art, science, everything. So those funds go to help fund those projects. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me or to Leslie Fitzgerald. But it is on Facebook. And so the goal is $100,000 in 6 weeks. They want to choose a part of the school, and they will be here in May. They'll be on the agenda in May. But I told her that I would put this out there tonight. All funds raised will go to this naming project, and you can find it on Facebook, and you can also deliver a check to the Bank of Easton on Washington Street in North Easton. So if anybody has any questions or anything, you can email me at my school committee email, and deluca@easton.k12.ma.us. Also, speaking of Mr. Paul and replacing him, which, it's kind of weird when we say that, but had a nice conversation. Well, I shouldn't say conversation. Hazel Varela and I email. And this next principal will be the 5th principal at Oliver Ames High School. The first official principal was in 1953, Peter McConerty. He was, the school committee decided that Oliver Ames needed a principal, a full-time principal, because before that, a teacher would be a principal. So there was a man named Gilman Campbell who was principal and teacher from 1927 to 1949. And interestingly enough, he left Oliver Ames to become a teacher at the new college of Stonehill, because that was their first year. So that's kind of interesting. So then we had Mr. Pruce, Julian Pruce. He was there from 1960 to 1978. And then we had Mr. Oliver, Duncan Oliver, who had been a teacher there And he was from the end of 1978 to 1999. And then Mr. Paul from 1999 to 2021. And he holds the record of 21 years for being principal. So it's interesting that this next principal will only be the 5th principal since 1953. I thought that was very interesting.
I just want to note, not to pick, but Mr. Paul, when he retires officially, will have been here 22 years and 6 months.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, I knew 21 was being bantied about. So, all right. Very good. Our next school committee meeting is April 8th at 5 o'clock on Zoom. Good luck to faculty, staff, everybody bringing our kiddos back. It's such an exciting time, but also kind of scary, but we're going to get through this. And thank you to Lynn Souza, Joe Bowerman. And you can watch us on Zoom and enjoy us every night of the week. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
O'Neill, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thanks everybody. Be safe. Get your shots.
Bye.